Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Manisha Koshi. I'm Senior Associate for Public Policy and Privacy at the Data Security Council of India. The role of this particular session, I know it's a 15-minute session. I hopefully will not take more than 15 minutes. I want to wrap this up really quickly. But the reason why we wanted to add the policy and privacy highlights of the year since previous AISS was to showcase two scopes of things. The first thing is the work that we've been able to do with the industry. That is the projects and the engagements and the sort of cross-sectoral and a kind of approach that we've been able to build, right? The different things that we've been able to work on. For example, we're building guidance material for the Data Protection Authority. We are trying to understand the sort of breach notification requirements. We are doing grassroots level work with different law schools. We're working with National Law School Bangalore on a policy competition to get like really young lawyers interested in public policy, specifically tech policy. While that is happening with our projects and engagements, we also do extensive work in life policy, right? So every time consultations come out through METI or NHA or RBI, SEBI, whoever the regulator is, when they put out consultations for anything to do with tech and something that's important to us, we make sure to, comment on it. So that can include things from cloud computing to, data retention policy requirements to data governance frameworks to how to, let's say, monetize public data, the whole host of things that we comment on and we kind of put our hands in, right? So we just want to make the work that the policy team does more accessible to everyone here, because we know some of you all we work very closely with, but some are still new faces to us. So just to kind of open our charter to you all and make make our work more familiar to everyone in the room. So we can start off with the highlights for 2022. Some of these projects are present continuous and some of these projects are still ongoing, just flagging that at the beginning. Not all of these projects are complete. The first project that we're working on, which has been a long-term project of ours, is the sectoral privacy project. We, in partnership with Umidiyah Network India, have come up with a sectoral privacy guidance material. So essentially, we are creating guidance material for three sectors. The first is healthcare, the second is insurance, and the third is banking. The healthcare guide is already out. We have conducted workshops for the same in Bangalore. We are still rolling out the workshops in different cities. The insurance guide just got launched last month, 30th of November, and the banking guide is being written and developed at the moment. So the reason why we wanted to have a sectoral approach to privacy is because we realized that while you have a data protection authority and you have the data protection bill, there's also very strong sectoral regulation. Right? So, for example, banking, for example, is heavily regulated by RBI, heavily regulated by SEBI. We wanted to make sure that we are giving them an extremely nuanced set of tools, a set of skills, in fact, also a self-assessment tool. So you can just go onto our microsite and there's a self-assessment tool that you can take. It takes about 20 minutes to do, and it gives you a quick and straightforward answer of where you are in your privacy posture. Where you have to work on, what are some of the key challenges that your company might have to start working on, so you don't have to get somebody from legal to come in and assess the entire thing. So before you do a data protection impact assessment, this is an easier sort of checklist that you can go through and, check yourself and see, how mature you are in your privacy posture. So the sectoral privacy project is a project that's very close to our heart, something that we've been working on for a long time. The banking guide should be out soon, so that way we have all three sectors out in the public. But if anyone is interested, please do check out the microsite. So we have a microsite that's linked to the DSAI website. You can please go ahead and take the self-assessment tool, and in about 20 minutes you'll get an answer of how mature your organization is. Moving on, this is just details around that. I'm just going to skip this. Another really interesting project that we've been working on last year is the Privacy Application Challenge. So our idea was that we realized there were technical, there were problems for which we needed technical solutions, and we realized that there were folks with the technical expertise either in the startup community or in the industry or even academia, but we wanted to bridge that gap. So essentially we came up with a bunch of use cases. We said, okay, privacy due diligence is a challenge, age gating is a challenge, age appropriate design is a challenge, and we gave them the use cases and we opened it up to the industry, startups and academia, and they came back with solutions, and we were able to close out the Privacy Application Challenge. I think in June we had Privacapien that won the first and second place for their first and third place for their work on privacy due diligence and
I think privacy due diligence, and I think purpose limitation. So this is another interesting application that we've been able to come up with for the past 2 years. This is the second year of the Privacy Application Challenge. Hopefully we'll be rolling this out next year as well. Again, we hope to make it more expansive. We want to have a larger group, a larger representation from industry coming in for next year. Hopefully we have more niche categories as well. We also want to try with a more sectoral approach. So sector-specific questions, let's say around healthcare and privacy, and then we give you a use case and you come back with a solution. So this is the Privacy Application Challenge. The award winners were also given a hefty cash prize. Another one of our long-term projects that we're very proud of and just got launched yesterday at AISS, so some of you all might be familiar, is the Digital Plus Plus Compendium. Essentially, this sort of material, this sort of compendium that we developed after talking to industry, to experts, technocrats, asking them what the sort of challenges and solutions for the next decade in technology was, right? So regulatory challenges, technical challenges, compliance challenges, and we essentially published a large study. Some you all might be familiar. Vakul Sharma was one of the contributors, Rahul Matan another contributor. So yeah, so this is another project that we're very proud of that is now available for everyone's eyes. Do check that out as well. This is something that we're very interested and very excited about, the DSCI NLS competition. So Data Security Council of India, along with National Law School Bangalore, is creating a policy case competition. The intent of the policy competition, essentially, we give them a policy challenge, a tech policy challenge that is rooted in privacy, and they have to come up with regulatory solutions. So like the Privacy Application Challenge is the tech solution, we give them a tech problem and you solve it for us. This is, we're giving them a regulatory problem and you solve it for us. So because the DSCI team, the policy team, is a very good mix and an amalgamation of tech folks and policy folks and lawyers, we want to make sure that we're bridging that gap as we go along. This primarily is to just get young lawyers interested and excited about tech policy, because I think something that we've learned personally is that a lot of people end up in policy the roundabout way. You graduate from law school or you get an MPP and then you go to a whole bunch of places and then end up in tech sort of inadvertently. We wanted to make sure that this was a viable career from day one. People, young students were seeing that this was an option that they could pick. So the competition is scheduled for the last week of Jan 2023. So the first rounds are happening at the moment. That's something else that we have to look forward to in the coming month. The Cypher initiative, again, is an academia DSCI collaboration. DSCI, along with Ashoka University in Delhi, is working on the Cypher project. The Cypher project, as you can see, stands for the Coalition of India for a Progressive and Holistic Encryption Regime. The core sort of guiding principle of the initiative is to look at encryption and cryptography in the realm of, privacy enhancing technologies, and how encryption and privacy go together, cryptography and privacy go together, and how it's a viable tool in protecting privacy long term. We also look at things like judgments. We also look at things like traceability. For example, that was a key study that we did last year. We actually developed 2 sets of interventions. One is talking to lawyers and talking to judicial experts and asking them, is traceability constitutionally valid? Can you ask for traceability to, is that something that is constitutionally allowed? And we also had technicians come in and check if we can continue to have traceability while end-to-end encryption is not broken. So we looked at the whole host of tests that the Madras High Court had come up with. So they said Kamakoti 1, Kamakoti 2, homomorphic encryption, a whole host of interventions that they said, can allow for traceability without breaking end-to-end encryption. And we actually rigorously tested it out in the labs. Right, so we developed prototypes, we developed systems, we actually wrote the code for it and tested it out and realized that traceability cannot be achieved without breaking end-to-end encryption. So we take up different interesting projects like this in cryptography in the encryption space. So that is what Cypher does. Cypher also has moved on it sort of has an expansive arm now, where we do training exercises for law enforcement agencies and judges. So we realized that especially in the law enforcement and judicial space, a lot of the participating members of the judicial sort of collegium don't understand what they're litigating over. right? There's a lack of understanding on the actual technologies that they're trying to litigate over. So we wanted to make sure that the practitioners themselves, the judicial practitioners themselves, were aware of the technology. So we took master classes for them. So we do master classes in encryption, in AI, facial recognition, emerging tech, drones, a whole host of subjects. We essentially get law enforcement and judges in the room and teach them the technical side of things, and they ask us the constitutional side of things, and we try and make them understand. So this is part of our knowledge share. The policy team's knowledge share does this. So yeah, that's the Cypher initiative. The next one is the Privacy Leadership Forum. I am sure a lot of the members in the room are already part of the Privacy Leadership Forum. It is essentially a collegium of data protection officers in the community to come together, because we realize that we have CISOs often in a group, but we realize that we don't often have DPOs in a group. So it was something that was conceptualized by DSCI to have the leaders in a group to kind of do two things. Number one is to make their own knowledge accessible to others in the industry. There were, these guys are experts at what they do, so we wanted to make sure that their knowledge was not kept in silos, but was made accessible to the rest of the industry. Also, for them to enable learning from each other. So, for example, if one enterprise is having challenges, let's say with cross-border data flows, then the experts in the group can help them navigate through that if they personally faced a challenge like that, right? And also, this again is a knowledge sharing exercise, because we've divided the Privacy Leadership Forum, the larger collegium, into 5 subcategories called special interest groups that are working on a whole host of different areas with with different work products at the end of it. So each SIG, for example, or the special interest group, for example, if they're working on data protection, cross-border data transfers, they come up with a project ultimately that says, okay, this is how cross-border data transfers can be done in the country. These are some of the key areas of consideration, and work products are being developed. So essentially, it's getting the experts in the group and then utilizing their knowledge in areas that we find, are of importance and of relevance. We have another project that we're working on with Fox Mandel, the law firm headquartered in Bangalore. The aim of the project fundamentally is to study data breaches and security breaches, because we understand for most data fiduciaries and data processors, there isn't a model contract when it comes to understanding breach notifications or breach contracts, right? So when you sign as a fiduciary, when you sign a contract with a processor, for most part, there isn't a model contract available, right? So we wanted to come up with something that was universally accessible, abstract enough for it to be sector agnostic, while looking at the key sort of clauses that you want to include in your contract when it comes to breach and breach incidents. So that's another project that we're working on. So this just shows you the kind of arms, the different things that we're doing at any given time. Another is last year we'd worked with GIZ and the Fair Forward initiative in Germany to develop a compendium on, basically a handbook on e-learning, around e-learning for technicians that are working with artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence developers. Now we're making that handbook into an e-learning course. So you don't need to necessarily just study the handbook. You can do the e-learning course with like around 8 modules that's available. It's going to be launched on our website soon. So you can just go on that and you get certified, if you do the course. And sort of it's basically ethics around AI and how you as a practitioner should keep these principles in mind. Let's say use limitation or purpose limitation, whatever you should keep in mind before developing ethical AI. So that's another project that we've been working on. Now we're getting into the life policy part of our work, which is essentially the consultations that we do. Now, I must say this is not an extensive list. This is not an exhaustive list of all the things that we've covered in the past year. This is just representative of some of the key or the most important submissions we've made in the past year. One, of course, the first one, I'm sure most of you all remember this year, last time, I think 2021, December 23rd is when we had the JPC report come out on the data protection bill, right? The previous iteration of the data protection bill. So we did an extensive consultation for the same, and we submitted a whole host of materials to the ministry talking about some of the key challenges where, the bill was really falling short of. And we believe truly that the advocacy effort that we did last year has reflected well, and that is the version of the bill we have at the moment. It's way more agile, it's sleek. Some of the key considerations, it's not as prescriptive as, the previous version of the bill was. So very strong advocacy was done around the previous version of the bill, which we believe has resulted in the newer, more agile, sleeker version of the bill. Another one, of course, going into the AI territory is the TRI consultation on AI intelligence in the telecom sector. Again, so I'm just not going to go into the details of what exactly we submitted for each, because then we'll be here forever. I'm just going to go through some of the key consultations we made. This, again, in the telecom sector, telecom and AI intersection. Another, of course, is the ONDC consultation on the network. So open network access and open data is something that, again, we're very interested in working on. This is something that we very extensive consultation that we had done with the ministry. Another, of course, is in the financial sector, the SEBI's cloud framework. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that. We, again, spoke heavily around joint controlship between the data controller, the data processor, and the data fiduciary. This was a key consideration that we had made on the cloud framework. We worked, of course, on the draft India Telecommunications Bill. We, again, submitted we did an extensive consultation process with the industry, of course, and then we made a very exhaustive submission to the ministry. The key principles that we were challenging them was on the definitions, on who exactly a telecom service provider is, what exactly is a telecom service. So just to the very basics of legislation, right? So we are very, very thorough in what we submit. So we go down to the very basics of legislation, study it from a constitutional angle, we study it from an implementation angle, we study it from an industry, perspective, from a long-term kind of, can this legislation stand the test of time? Can it at least stand, can it at least compete with Moore's law, is something that we generally sort of check for ourselves. So this, again, was a very extensive submission that we had made. The Digital Trust Mark project, I think this kind of sneaked into, this is a project that we've been working on essentially at DSAI to come up with a seal, essentially, right? So you have ISO seals on products to mark assurance of, quality. We want to come up with a seal essentially that we can put on websites, apps, services, products, if they comply with privacy. If they comply with our regulatory challenge, like our regulatory benchmark of privacy, then we give them a seal. So it's the DSAI seal that we are planning on developing. So essentially our aim is that in the future you can look at a particular product and if the seal is there, you can say, okay, this is privacy compliant, right? So that's another project that we're working on. Another consultation that we've made, this is when I was talking about monetization of public data, right? So there were two consultations that come out. One was the accessibility policy in Feb, and then I think it dovetailed with the draft National Data Governance Framework Policy, which essentially talked about how the government can utilize and kind of tap into the resources of public data. The first accessibility policy spoke about monetization. Data monetization was an important aspect of that. But the second version of the second iteration didn't have monetization as important as a key part, but fundamentally just spoke about how public data can be made more accessible for better public use and, to make public products more better generally. So that's another thing that we heavily consulted on. We are pro the government having access, utilizing public information, but again, privacy is a key area of consideration. Something that we always challenge them on is interlinking of data sets, right? We understand data sets on their own are fantastic. They can do a lot of good, but then interlinking data sets, that's your KYC with your Aadhaar, with your bank details, with your phone number, essentially we've kind of lost the plot then suddenly. So key challenges around privacy was our key area of consideration in this. Again, something that we spoke very extensively to the ministry on. Again, something that we are consulting at the moment is the Niti Aayog's facial recognition technology consultation. It's still in the process of being developed because the deadline is to come soon. So this, again, we're talking about some of the key privacy challenges, of course, some of the key challenges when it comes to AI-based biases and, that kind of sort of profiling, and all of that angle is kind of what we're talking about. We're also talking about the importance of and the actual uses of facial recognition technology. For example, DigiYatra is something that Vinayak mentioned. The whole point is to make it make it, seamless and smooth, but we, again, are talking about the key sort of privacy challenges and how this might affect things like like adequacy in the long term, right? So because this is something, airports, for example, are something that's open to a huge amount of international, international folks coming in. So we want to make sure that we don't have key challenges in adequacy and things like that. So this is another area of consideration. The last slide for today is the last thing that we're working on. I think the most actively at the moment is the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill. I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. We've done extensive consultations on the same. We've held consultations in Bangalore, Delhi, Chennai, Hyderabad. I think we did 2 consultations in Bangalore because one just wasn't enough. So this is something that we're working on extensively. We've got a huge number of inputs from the industry. If anyone in the room still wants to give us inputs, please do. We're always looking forward to hear everyone's opinion. So again, we've heard from every possible sector, every possible, size of enterprise, from small and medium enterprises to sectors and companies that have been here for aeons. So yeah, the deadline is approaching soon. Jan 2nd is the consultation deadline. So before that, hopefully we can produce a document that we can make accessible to the industry beforehand, so everyone can take a look at what we've written. So these are just a broad scope of things that we do at the policy team. We're a tiny team, but we do a lot. But this is by no means exhaustive of the things that we do. And yeah, this is just to give everyone a taster of the work we do in privacy along with security at DSCI. All right.